Hello and welcome back to another EDH deck tech idea. Today we are taking a look at Saheeli, the Sun's Brilliance. She's a 2 mana 2/2 and she has an activated ability for 2 mana, and tapping her, create a token that's a copy of another target creature or artifact you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste, and sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Due to her low CMC, we want to play her on turn 2, and then we want to use her ability to generate a lot of value and win the game with a few synergy pieces. Once we have accelerated our game plan, we want to play cards like Wurmcoil Engine, a 6 mana 6/6 with Death Touch and Lifelink, and when it dies, create a free colorless worm artifact creature token with Death Touch and a free colorless worm artifact creature token with Lifelink. We want to keep the original Wurmcoil Engine around and just copy it over and over again with Saheeli, because in our end step we will have to sacrifice the copy and then we will still get the little free copy tokens. Another really powerful creature is Trumpeting Carnosaur, a 6 mana 7/6 with Trample, and when it enters the battlefield, discover 5. It is also a very flexible card because for 3 mana and discarding it, we can deal 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Of course, we are looking towards casting this one to get the Discover 5 trigger, and after that we want to copy it with Saheeli because the token copy will also enter the battlefield, so we will get another Discover 5 trigger. Threefold Thunderhulk, a 7 mana 0/0, and it enters the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, create a number of 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens equal to its power. We can also pay 2 generic and sacrifice another artifact to put a +1/+1 counter on Threefold Thunderhulk. This powerful artifact creature will help us to go wide within 1 turn. And the original one is also another great sacrifice outlet that we can use to sacrifice our token copies into. Mere Battlesphere, a 7 mana 4/7, and when it enters the battlefield, create 4 1/1 colorless Mere artifact creature tokens. When it attacks, you may tap X untapped Meres you control, and if you do, Mere Battlesphere gets +X/+0 until end of turn and deals X damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. A card that will help us to accelerate our game plan is Atsushi, the Blazing Sky, a 4 mana 4/4 with Flying and Trample, and when it dies, choose 1. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn you may play those cards, or you can create 3 treasure tokens. Saheeli won't create non-legendary copies of the cards that we are copying, so due to the legendary rule we will immediately have to sacrifice the copy or the original Atsushi, but due to the death triggers we will still draw a lot of value from it by either generating more card advantage or more mana advantage. One of the coolest creatures in this deck is Reef Worm, a 4 mana 0/1, and when it dies, create a 3/3 blue fish creature token with, when this creature dies, create a 6/6 blue whale creature token with, when this creature dies, create a 9/9 blue kraken creature token. Due to the fact that the token will sacrifice itself in our end step, we will get the first death trigger, and afterwards we can keep copying the copies of the new created creatures to diversify our board with fishes, whales and krakens. Let's get back to accelerating our game plan. We want to play Ichor Wellspring, a 2 mana artifact that when it enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we draw a card. Due to us being an artifact deck, we also play Fort Monitor, a 7 mana 2/2 with affinity for artifacts, so it costs 1 generic less to cast for each artifact that we control. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield we draw 2 cards. To ramp we play Solemn Simulacrum, a 4 mana 2/2. When it enters the battlefield you may search your library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. Once we have copied Solemn Simulacrum we will get another basic land, and due to the token sacrificing itself in our end step we will also get to draw a card. Mere Retriever, a 2 mana 1/1, and when it dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Legion Extruder is a really powerful artifact in this deck, a 2 mana artifact, and when it enters the battlefield it deals 2 damage to any target. For 2 generic, tapping it and sacrificing another artifact, create a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token. Before our tokens sacrifice themselves in our end step, we will just sacrifice them into Legion Extruder to get another body with them. Circuit Mender, a 3 mana 2/3, and when it enters the battlefield you gain 2 life. When it leaves the battlefield we draw a card. So first of all, we will stabilize our life total, we will copy it, stabilize even more, and then when it sacrifices itself, we will draw a card. There are a few powerful enchantments that we definitely have to play in this deck. For example, Determined Iteration, a 2-mana enchantment, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, populate. The token created this way gains haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. This very cheap enchantment will get out of hand in this deck really quickly, as it will give us permanent value, because we will keep creating artifact token copies of our copies that we have created with Saheeli. Industrial Advancement, a 4-mana enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is that creature's mana value. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. It is very important for us that we will just sacrifice our token copies into something more valuable than just into themselves in our end step, so Industrial Advancement is a great card in this deck. Virtue of Knowledge, a 5-mana enchantment, and if a permanent entering the battlefield causes the triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Doubling ETB effects can be very powerful from the creature cards that you have just seen in this deck so far, but the instant side of this card is also really helpful. Ventress Visions, a 2-mana instant, copy target activated or triggered ability you control, you may choose new targets for the copy. This very cheap copy effect can generate a lot of value for us. You want to win more? You get it. Esoteric Duplicator, a 3-mana artifact clue, and whenever you sacrifice Esoteric Duplicator or another artifact, you may pay 2 generic. And if you do, at the beginning of the next end step, create a token that's a copy of that artifact. For 2 generic, sacrificing Esoteric Duplicator, you draw a card. If it just so happens that we sacrifice the token copy that we created with Saheeli in our end step, we can pay 2 generic in our end step, so at the beginning of the end step of our opponent we will create a token copy of the artifact that we just sacrificed. Your opponents and yourself will definitely have to keep an eye on this one, as it happens one end step later, which is also some kind of protection for your new token. World Walker Helm, a 3-mana artifact, and if you would create 1 or more artifact tokens, instead create those tokens plus an additional map token. For 1 generic, tapping it and sacrificing the map token, target creature you control explores, which is always a nice to have. And for 2 mana, tapping it, create a token that's a copy of target artifact token you control. Just as with Determined Iteration, we can keep copying our token copies for even more value. Simulacrum Synthesizer, a 3-mana artifact, and when it enters the battlefield we scry 2. Whenever another artifact with mana value 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. This extremely powerful artifact will definitely get out of hand if it stays on the board unanswered. And you definitely have to play Joyra, Revelite Captain, a 4-mana 3/3, and whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card. Joyra will provide constant card draw for you, so you never run out of gas for artifact creatures that you want to copy with Saheeli. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I will play in Saheeli, the Sun's Brilliance. Let me know down in the comments below which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next, and then I would say, see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.